You know, now that I've been thinking about it, I don't think I've ever had a chance to do a video review on an Ys game. By Ys, I am referring to the series that starts with the word YS. Some people call it Ys, some call it Ys, which is the proper pronunciation. The last Ys game to release on the PlayStation Vita, but now that the new game is out, Ys VIII, I can do a video review because it is very compatible with the PlayStation TV. Without further ado, here is my video review of Ys VIII, Lacrimosa of Dana. Lacrimosa takes place an unexplained amount of time before the events of Ys VII. Adol and Dogi are serving as sailors on a ship, and during their voyage, the ship is attacked by a giant squid-like monster. The ship is sunk, Adol, Dogi, and the rest of the passengers are all washed ashore on a deserted island filled with giant monsters. With no way to escape the island, Adol begins to explore, trying to rescue the missing passengers and make preparations so they can get away. Now, the story of Lacrimosa is really good because it has that big JRPG feel. The beginning half of the game kind of has that light story, gameplay heavy feel that most Ys games has, but once you get to the second half of the island, everything kicks into high gear with that epic JRPG story and really just pulls you in with emotional tugs, everything that's going on, the backstory. It's just a really, really good story. As far as gameplay goes, Lacrimosa of Dana is like an action RPG with exploration elements, and we've got some light tower defense elements thrown into the mix as well. It's got plenty of elements from past games. The core gameplay is retained from Ys VII and Memories of Celceta, and it's been enhanced here and there. Now, how does the game progress? When you first wash ashore the island and the game begins, you have two main tasks. Develop your village, and explore the island to rescue passengers. And both of these are intertwined for the first half of the story. As you rescue passengers, more facilities are added to the village, like a smithy, an item shop, a clinic. Now, actual exploration is pretty simple. It's not unlike the exploration from Memories of Celceta when you were accessing and exploring the Celceta forest. You go from area to area filled with harvest points and monsters to fight off, and your task is to continue finding new areas until you rescue a new passenger, and then keep going and kind of repeating the process. Now, not all of the areas are accessible right away. There are a lot of obstacles that require assistance from the village. Now, the second side of all of this game progression is the tower defense element I mentioned earlier. Once you start increasing your population of the village, monsters will start targeting it, and you will have to be recalled from exploration to take part in raid battles, where you fight off waves of enemies, protecting your own village gate from being breached. Now, this is a really neat feature because you have something to do aside from exploring, and you can even enhance and kind of customize and build up all of your defenses for these raid battles. But the way the game handled it could have been a lot better. The main downside of the raid battle is that the feature is overused. When you're in the first half of the game, and you're just doing exploration, you have very little story to go off of. It's not really that big of a deal to kind of explore for a while and then suddenly get a notification, hey, the village is being attacked, you need to come back here. But once you get to the second half of the game, when the story takes over, the game introduces these raid battles at crucial moments. You're about to find out some huge secret about the backstory of this place, and right before you go in, raid battle, you need to come back to the village. Note that these raid battles are all optional. There are very few story-based ones, so you don't have to do any of them. And towards the end of the game, when all of this big story stuff was being interrupted by raid battles, I just ignored them. It's not that it's repetitive, it's just a nuisance because of the placement of all of these raid battle requests. And the final aspect of gameplay is the combat. There's not a whole lot of difference between combat in Lacrimosa of Dana and combat in VII and Celceta. You have a party of characters, each one has a specific elemental attack that some enemies are weak to, and you still got your skill system where you can attack enemies to gain skill points, and then combo physical attacks into these skills to do a lot of damage. Now, the final two things we need to talk about are some of the new ending features and the game's length. Lacrimosa of Dana introduces to the series character approval and multiple endings. Whenever you do a quest for a certain character or give them a gift item, their approval goes up. This is beyond just random dating sim elements. This is there to unlock specific events for that character, but approval is also tied to what ending you get, whether you get the good ending, the bad ending, or the true ending. And speaking of the endings, how long is the game? Falcom claimed the game was 40 to 60 hours long, and it is not 40 to 60 hours long. It took me about 30 hours to go from start to finish, while doing a few side quests here and there, but mostly just sticking to exploring along the main story paths and getting to the end of the game's plot. It took me another 5 hours to do other quests and work on approval for the true ending. So I would say a good medium would be 30 to 35 hours. Maybe if you're working on the harder difficulties, it's more around 35 to 40 hours. Now, the most important aspect of this review, because it's a review of the Vita version, is presentation. Graphically, Lacrimosa of Donna looks good, but at the same time it doesn't look good. It's one of those games where the closer the camera is to a character model, the better and higher quality that character model looks. So cutscenes look really nice. Gameplay, where the camera is significantly farther away, looks grainy. There are jagged edges everywhere. It just doesn't look nearly as good as previous games of the series. And performance is the other thing we want to talk about. Loading sequences aren't a problem, but the frame rate. It's steady, but it's not 30 FPS. After playing through the entire game, I would say that the average FPS of the game is probably around 25. This is smooth enough to be playable and enjoyable, but it's not smooth like 30 FPS is. In conclusion, Lacrimosa of Donna is a great addition to this series of action RPGs. Now, there are some technical issues, and the raid battle system really ends up being more of a nuisance than a fun asset by the game's end. Everything else about the game is the definition of what a grand action RPG is all about. If you're a fan of the series, or just a fan of action RPGs, this is an experience that is worth every penny. Reviews to Go rates Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Donna, an 8 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below, or head to the website at www.reviewstogo.com.